What's good, YouTube? It's me, your boy Squiddy. Okay, I have this crazy idea for a potential deck for YCS Pasadena that I think is a real contender. Naturias. These guys just got some new crazy support in the recent pack that has been overshadowed by, all this stuff with the tiers, with the ban list, with the new sprint stuff, and like obviously these Ishizu cards that are coming out. A lot of people don't know that this deck is actually really, really scary and does have a potential chance, I think a really good chance, in fact, of being a sleeper rogue deck for the event and even like the format moving forward. Basically, a lot of these cards are actually a somewhat direct counter to the tier deck in that you can set up cool locks that negate monster effects. One thing to note is that these new Naturia cards, a lot of them work with the old ones, and the old ones aren't even once per turn, so you can just like abuse their effects. But without further rambling, I thought we'd just dive into the deck so I can explain to you guys how this deck works. As you can see, there are some Tearlaments, well, not Tearlaments, but Ishizu cards that do mesh perfectly into this deck, and it's really interesting because there are a couple of engines in this deck that just happen to work with the Ishizu decks. Ishizu cards being Earth Fairy monsters pair really well with some of the cards that are in this deck. So without further ado, let's just dive in, and I'll try to do my best to explain some of these monster effects because I know you guys, for the most part, probably don't know what they do. But here it is. They've gotten 3 new Naturia cards in the Darkwing Blast set that are actually bonkers. Like, these cards are just have like multiple effects that are all super relevant. The first card is Naturia Camellia. This is a level 4 plant tuner. So it's a level 4 tuner, and it's a plant card. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can send one Naturia card, not monster, card, from your deck to your graveyard. That's the first effect. So obviously already it's like an Armageddon Knight. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Second effect is if you would tribute a monster to activate a Naturia monster's effect, you can send the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard instead. So it essentially converts all of your older Naturia monsters into a Naturia Beast effect. Older Naturia monsters require you to tribute itself as well as another copy of a Naturia monster on your board. So it's super bad, super neg in the sense that you have to tribute 2 monsters. But having this card on board with one of those older monsters allows you to just send top 2 cards of your deck instead of tributing, so you keep the monsters on board. And because the older monsters are not once per turn, you can do this multiple times. And when you do mill cards from your deck, you are actually milling Ishizu cards or other cards like Naturia Sacred Tree, which allows you to add any Naturia card from your deck to your hand when it is sent to the graveyard in any manner possible. So super cool that has that effect. And then the other effect is also super devastating. If your opponent normal summons or special summons a monster, except during the damage step, you can special summon one Naturia monster from your graveyard, and then all these are hard ones per turn. So when this is on the board and you have another monster in your graveyard and your opponent special summons or normals a monster, so like when they try to play the game, you can special summon any Naturia monster from your deck, from your graveyard to your field rather, which is super cool. So it's essentially an engine starter. It's a starter and an extender and somewhat of a card that kind of like almost a pseudo floodgate in that like it brings stuff back, like it's kind of like an annoying interrupt, I should say. The next card is Naturia Mole Cricket. This is a level 1 insect with 0 attack, 0 defense. During the main phase, quick effect, you contribute this card, special summon 1 Naturia monster from your deck, or you can special summon 2 Naturia monsters if your opponent controls a monster with the highest attack on the field, even if it's tied. Okay, so we're like, holy crap, this is essentially like a Lone Fire Blossom for any Naturia monster in your deck, including Naturia Camellia, which would then trigger its effect to send a card from the deck to the graveyard, as well as put it on the board for the rest of its effects. Okay, super cool. And if your opponent happens to have a monster on board that has higher attack, which is essentially a lot of monsters in the format, including cards on your turn like Halfness, the Beastils, any card that special summons a monster on their field allows this to summon 2 monsters to your field, which is super crazy. And because Ash Blossom is not a popular card in the format, this card is almost always going to resolve. People are not playing Veiler, people are not playing Ash, people are not playing Imperm. There are not a lot of cards to actually stop this card's effect. Previously when people were playing Ash, and Sprites and whatnot, this might have been turn ending. It might have been backbreaking to summon this into an Ash or a Veiler. But now, like, people are not playing those cards because they're not good against Tearlaments. So it's just like this card just becomes super good. And then the other effect is if this card is in your graveyard and your opponent special summons a monster from the extra deck, or you special summon a Naturia monster from your extra deck, so like one of these synchros, you can special summon this card from your graveyard, and each card is each effect is hard once per turn. So this card, after you use its effect, it chills in your graveyard, and then on their turn when they try to play, you can special summon this card back and use the effect again during their main phase because it is a quick effect. So what does that do for you is that you summon Naturia Camellia to start your play. You can Foolish a Naturia Sacred Tree, which allows you to add either Mo Cricket or one of the new cards, including Naturia Blessing, which is a quick effect monster reborn, non-targeting from your graveyard or from your hand for any Naturia monster. So this card, obviously, Camellia becomes a searcher for any of the cards, as well as being able to Foolish Mo Cricket if you have to. And then on their turn, when they summon a monster from their extra deck, you can summon back the Mo Cricket and then special summon, tribute it, special summon either another Camellia plus another monster. Which brings us to the next Naturia cards, Naturia Stinkbug and Sunflower. We'll go over Sunflower first because this is the one that is really, really devastating that you can create a lock with. This is an older monster that has recently been errata to be even better. Its effect is when your opponent's monster's effect is activated, quick effect, you contribute one Naturia monster, and this card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Previously, the old text in the TCG, I think was mistranslated, is that when your opponent it's monster effect that they control activates, so it had to be a monster on their field. But now in the new printing in the latest Hidden Arsenal, it's been re-errated. So when your opponent's monster is activated anywhere, so it could be a Nibiru in hand, could be a monster in grave, could be any Tearlaments monster in grave, you contribute 2 monsters, including this card and Naturia monster, to negate the effect and destroy it. But the thing is, when you have Camellia on the board, you don't have to tribute this. You can just send the top 2. You mill top 2 to negate and destroy any monster effect, and it's not once returned. So essentially, when you have this card in Camellia, they cannot do any monster effects. They would have to try and swing over the Naturia Sunflower by battle and then proceed to do their combos, which is nice because the next card is Naturia Stinkbug. This card is when a Naturia monster you control is targeted for attack. Quick effect, you can send this card from the field to graveyard, negate the attack, and end the battle phase. So it's a battle fader for Naturias, which you can also summon off of Mo Cricket. But again, when we have Camellia on the field, this card does not have to tribute. You can just mill 2 cards to activate the effect to end the battle phase. And obviously, Sunflower being level 2, we can actually use Elf to Elf it back. So we can just like recur this really, really easily. It's funny. And then, obviously, when you have Camellia, let's say, like, the standard play, we don't have anything else to do. We could summon Naturia Camellia, Foolish, and Mo Cricket. On their turn, they're kind of, like, forced to either swing over the Camellia, but if they normal summon, we can bring back the Mo Cricket. And if they normal summon something bigger than 1400, which they would need to swing over the Camellia, because even if they have the highest monster attack on the field, if it's tied with Camellia, 1400, we can still use this effect to potentially tribute itself. So when your opponent normal summons, you use the Camellia's effect, bring back the Mo Cricket, and then we can use the Mo Cricket's effect, tribute itself, summon 2 monsters, so we can summon Sunflower and Stinkbug, and all of a sudden they're kind of locked down because they can try to attack over the Sunflower, but then you contribute the Stinkbug to negate that attack and end the battle phase, and then Sunflower can negate monster effects infinitely as long as you have Camellia on the board. So yeah, super, super, super cool little lock that you can set up, which is essentially like why the deck is so good, I think. And again, you do, like, this being a tuner, for example, if you do send Naturia Sacred Tree to add a quick play, because this adds any Naturia card, not just monsters, so you can add Blessing, and then activate Blessing, you know, to summon, like, a Mo Cricket from your hand, for example, that you happen to draw. Make Naturia Beast. Because you summon a monster that's Naturia from your extra deck, Mo Cricket can come back with the effect, and then you can use Mo Cricket's effect, actually, to summon another Camellia, so then you have Naturia Beast plus Camellia for the lock. They can't use spell effects, but again, you do have a high monster attack, so Mo Cricket would only be able to tribute itself for 1 monster if they don't make something bigger than 22, so you can only summon Sunflower and you don't get the Stinkbug lock. But again, like, if you have other cards in your hand, other extenders, you can set that up pretty easily. And Beast being such a powerful card against a lot of decks in the format, things like Runic Sprite, obviously, they're just completely holds down by Naturia Beast, as well as, you know, Mystic Mind. Like, you're not really affected because you can just negate and destroy. So, yeah, cool little combos that you can do with the deck. And then we get to the next engine, which is Vernusylphs. These cards are new cards that just came out in the recent set. Essentially, what these cards do is, they're a bunch of them. They're almost like Dragon Rulers. You discard this card and another monster in your hand or a Vernusylph card, and then they all have an effect. And then after that effect resolves, you can summon back 1 Earth monster from your graveyard. Non-targeting. So, for example, Vernusylph of the Misting Seedlings, you can discard this card and 1 monster. They have a restriction where you cannot activate non-Earth monster effects for the rest of the turn, but then you can add 1 Earth Fairy monster from your deck to the hand. Any of these, which are also Earth Fairy monsters for some weird reason, you can add the Ishizu cards, which is crazy, and then you can special summon back an Earth monster, including the one that you discarded. So, yeah. you can see where I'm going with this. You can discard a Mole Cricket, you can discard a Camellia, get the effect to add one of these Ishizu cards as extenders, and then you summon it back without using your normal summon, and you get the effect because this gets the effect. When it's special summon, you can do Camellia or like Mole Cricket, for example. And then you also happen to be able to add another card to your hand. And then, yeah, so these cards are really, really good. There are quite a few of them. I decided to only play a couple of them because having a lot of them doesn't really tap into your Naturia engine. But this is the best one, I think, the Vernusylph, because you can, of the Misting Seeding, because you can add the Keldo or Medora or any of these, actually. There's also Vernusylph of the Flourishing Hills. This card is similar. You discard this card, one monster over on Vernusylph card. Add one Vernusylph card from your deck to your hand. So you can discard this to add the Seedling, which you can discard again to summon another monster to add one of the Ishizu cards. There's also Vernusylph of the Thawing Mountains, which allows you to do the same thing, but you discard a monster and you draw a card, and then you special summon back an Earth monster. So I decided to play a minimal engine. Just these are extenders, so you can summon Camellia or Mole Cricket when you happen to draw the card with your other card, and then you summon it back. Or you can discard one of these Shizu cards as well to either mill or to summon back to your field, and then you can make a Bistroller really, really easily because they are level 4. So these cards are super, super wicked. There are some other cards as well of the Vernusylphs that you can potentially tech into your deck. All of these trap cards as well, they have some interrupts that can also be discarded off of them for their effects. There is also one that adds back one Earth monster from your graveyard and then special summons, and also this one that Foolish is, Vernusylph of the Awakening Forests, which we have in our side deck because it gets really, really cool. You can actually Foolish some other cards like Fossil Dino as well as Mechanical Hound, which we'll get to in a second here. So moving along really quickly because I kind of rambled about most of the engine here. Lots of information, but we also play the Ishizu cards because, surprise, surprise, these go really well with the Vernusylph cards. They're Earth monsters. The Earth Fairies as well, they're searchable, and obviously being able to discard each other. Keldo can also discard one of these Vernusylphs if you choose to do that route instead to be able to add another of the Ishizu Dorks to your hand. So super, super cool. Obviously, a lot of the tier players don't, like a lot of players in general aren't going to know what the Naturia cards do. They're going to be dizzy against your deck. They're not going to know how to play against it. They're probably going to try and mill you because they don't realize that, you know, your deck is a deck that likes being milled. So they're going to do that. You're going to be able to mill Medora and Keldo so you can stop their Tearlaments effects. As well as them milling like your Sacred Tree, you get to add. When this card is sent to the graveyard from anywhere, doesn't matter where, hand, field, graveyard, deck, you can add a Naturia card from your deck to your hand. So you're always going for pluses. Obviously, it chose to play a low count here with 2 Kelbeck and 1 Agido because Tears being the most popular deck in the format, you don't really want to mill them. Obviously, if you mill them, like, it's never good. They're going to trigger a bunch of names, and we're kind of like, you know, doesn't really feel good. So, but we're still going to play them because if we play non-tier decks, we're going to want to mill them. Or like sometimes we just have to mill them. And obviously Agido being an effect from your hand is super, super relevant because it is a super crucial extender in this deck because you can make a plethora of rank 4s here or into something like Asa and just like go into extender plays. So cool little combos. Maybe you can bump them up if you choose to. I really wanted to keep this deck in 40 because I did find that it had a little bit of trouble tapping into the Naturia engine sometimes, like drawing the cards, which are super, super critical for you to win the game. You do have to see Camellia and Mole Cricket ideally because those are like the bane of your deck's engine. So want to keep it to a 40. Obviously, 3 Herald of Orange Light. We have a bunch of Ishizu Fairies as well as the Vernusylphs, and this card being like good on your turn, good on their turn, being just a crazy card that can push through your plays. I think is a crucial 3-up. We also play Cashier of Fenrir. This card is an Earth monster. Okay, so it works with Vernusylphs. We can discard them, bring them back, and we're locked in Earth monster effect, so we can still use this. For example, if you have Cashier Fenrir and Vernusylph of the Misting Seedlings, you can do a cute play like summon Fenrir, use the effect, add the second copy, discard Misting Seedlings with the second copy of Fenrir that was essentially free, add one of these cards, add a Keldo or Medora to your hand or a Kelbeck if you want a hand trap, and special summon the Fenrir that you discarded. So all of a sudden we have 2 Fenrirs on the field. Like we can, you know, do some plays here. We got a Fenrir as well as an extender body that we can use for our secondary plays. Decided to play also the Magnamuts and the Truist Worm, so the Bystials. Just a small engine. It does conflict with the Vernusylphs on your turn if you do happen to use the Vernusylph first because you're locked into Earth Monster. But I think they're good enough that you can use them on your opponent's turn. Obviously, they're really popular against Tiers. They give you a body you can extend with. And then you can also make Beatrice to send Naturia Sacred Tree to your graveyard to add any of these Naturia cards. So you're tapping an engine. One thing to note is obviously Magnamut being kind of bad is when they mill you, they can bring back with Dark and then they get their own Jerusalem. But again, we don't play any Darks in this deck. So that's the other thing why this deck could be really, really good. we don't care about like the Bystials that are going to be running around everywhere in the format. That's going to be backbreaking against tier decks. But these cards are all Earth monsters, so their Bystials are just going to be chilling in their hand. Like they can use them as extenders on their turn, you know, as monster bodies, but that's about the extent of it. They're not going to be getting the true value by banishing cards and stopping our plays like they would normally do for the tier deck. So something to note, this could be your top rogue contender, given that like people don't know what the cards do. They're brand new. They have a bunch of text, so people are going to get really nervous and flustered and dizzy reading them in a high tense situation like a YCS, because like already they're playing Tearlaments. That deck is super big brain. There are a lot of plays going on, a lot of chain links. They're trying to deal with your cards at the same time and read them. They're going to be like, oh wow, I don't really know what to do. So that's something that's super cool. They dodge the Bystial monsters, which is also really, really good. Your opponent might choose to mill you because they don't know that you like being milled. So like we're adding cards to our deck. We're putting Ishizu to the graveyard. It's super, super cool. We get to play Naturia Beast, which is really, really good against cards like Mystic Mine. There are a lot of reasons to play this deck, I think. And obviously setting up the Sunflower Lock with the Stink Bug is just super, super crucial. And then one called by, because again, you know, for the Tearlaments, it's really, really broken card. Stops their tier name for both turns, so why not? 3 Naturia Blessing. So again, this card allows you to do 3 effects. The notable one is special summon 1 Naturia monster from your hand or graveyard, non-targeting. Not once per turn, by the way. This card is not once per turn, so you can activate multiples. Cute little plays that you can make. If you have this set and you have a Naturia Camellia in your graveyard, your opponent activates a Tearlaments effect to special summon. We can chain Blessing to special summon back Camellia. They summon out their Tearlaments fusion. We can use both effects of Camellia. We can actually go first effect to special summon a monster from our graveyard because it matched the timing where we brought back Camellia and then they summon, so it sees that they summoned a monster. So we can use Camellia's effect to special summon from graveyard. And after that, we can also build the chain that we can Foolish Naturia card. So we can Foolish a Mole Cricket or a Naturia Sacred Tree to add a copy of Blessing for our turn to play as an extender. The other effect of Naturia Blessing that aren't used quite as much is immediately after this effect resolves, Synchro Summon 1 Synchro Monster using cards you control, including a Naturia monster, or Fusion Summon 1 Fusion Monster from your deck, including Naturia, which we don't play any Fusion, so that one isn't really relevant. But the Synchro one can come up. Let's say you summon Naturia Camellia while you have a Mole Cricket on the board and they happen to do Chain Effect Failure or like Dragostep Failure or something to negate the effect. Well, we can chain Naturia Blessing, make Naturia Beast, and because the target is gone, we can resolve the Camellia to Foolish a card. Sacred Tree to add another copy of Blessing. So essentially we had a free Blessing to... That was really loud, I don't know what that is. But we have a free Blessing to negate... that we traded off for like the Dragostep Failure effect, and we got to add another one. So it's like, you know, we got a free plus. Why not? Cute little thing you can do there. Obviously, being a quick play effect that is not once per turn, non-targeting is just super, super cool. 2 Foolish Burial Goods. This card is strictly to send Naturia Sacred Tree, because one thing I realized when playing this deck, a lot of games that we lost, is because we don't see the Naturia cards. We see like a handful of Ishizu cards with some Vernusylphs, maybe a Beastial. None of those get us to our engine unless we mill with Kelbeck or Agido to try and hit a copy of Sacred Tree or like Mole Cricket, which we don't really want to do because Tearlaments, you know, they like being milled. So yeah, we're just going to use this to being as Rotos for our Naturia monsters. Super cool. And obviously Naturia Tree being number 1 as a searcher. But the other fact is you can actually tribute 1 Earth monster, summon a plant, or tribute an Earth plant, summon a level 4 insect from your deck. So you can tribute Mole Cricket, tribute Camellia to summon one or the other, dodge removal effects, dodge quick play effects. So yeah, super, super cool. Oh, this video is really long, so I gotta go past. Side deck, just some more Beastials. Fossil Dyna and Mechanical Hound. These cards are super, super cool because you can Foolish them. With this card, Vernusylph of the Wicking Forest, you can Foolish, send an Earth monster with itself to Foolish a card, and then you can special summon a monster except for the one you Foolish. So if you have another copy of another Vernusylph, you can actually summon back a Mechanical Hound or a Fossil Dyna, or you can happen to mill these with the Ishizu that you can bring back with the Vernusylphs. And obviously locking them down from special summoning or locking down all spells is something to keep, you know, something cute to do. Just some back row removal, back row hit, Cosmics, and Evenly, which I think could be decent against Tier. Some Soul Drains, because I think that card is decent against Tier. Going first shuts down them completely. And if you have it backed by Naturia Beast, there's not a lot they can do besides like a Zeus play. It does shut down Mole Cricket, but again, we're playing for the most part with the rest of our deck while they are not. Extra deck, we get to play Trishula, because there are a lot of times where you have level 9s, 2 Camellia, and a Mole Cricket, for example. You can actually make Crystron, which requires 2 tuners plus 1 or more non-tuner monsters. If this card is Synchro Summoned, you can target monsters your opponent controls or in their graveyard up to the number of Synchro monsters used for this card. Banish them, so you can banish 3 from the field and or graveyard. And then when it's destroyed by battle card effect, you can target a banished card, banish monster, special summon it to your field. So just removal. This deck does deal with, it has some trouble dealing with removal, so you do have to be careful. Trishula, obviously, it does come up sometimes. You can easily make this with like a Vernusylph, Camellia, and a Molker kit. Being generic removal, why not? Barkion for trap decks, Naturia Beast, again, for negating spells, Dweller, Beatrice for the Bestials. We have a lot of Zeus, and then rank 4 package, we have Baguska, as well as the Utopias, because you can actually overlay these to a 4 material Zeus. So overlay to Utopia plus this, plus 4 material Zeus, or a 5 material Zeus if you choose. So this could maybe be replaced for something else, but Utopia Prime is pretty decent for a game shot. Asa being super good with all the Earth monsters, obviously, to summon back Earth monsters. And then we have Curious as well to Foolish Nature's Sacred Tree. If you don't happen to get to your engine, you can Foolish that to add to start your engine. Be aware it is light, so you have to be careful if you're locked into Earth monsters. It does not work. Borolo Dragon for getting rid of tricky monsters like Avermax, as well as being just a good generic removal outlet. And then Elf to bring back your Sunflower. So yeah, this is a cool little deck. I think it would be a real contender. I'll do another video with combos, but definitely try this deck and let me know what you guys think in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll make some more videos. Ciao for now. See you guys.